Nathan Cross walked into the cathedral with a briefcase containing $100,000 in cash, prepared to honor the man who had tried to kill him 3 times. Every eye turned to watch the most feared Mafia boss in Chicago pay respects to his sworn enemy. But as he approached the casket, his expression changed from solemnity to something darker, because the body lying inside wasn't his rival at all. If you're listening to this story, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments what part of the world you're listening from. The rain had been falling on Chicago for 3 days straight when Nathan Cross stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. Water streaked down the glass in rivulets that caught the gray afternoon light, distorting the city below into something almost unrecognizable. He watched a taxi hydroplane through a puddle on East Lake Shore Drive, sending a wave of brown water onto the sidewalk. Everything looked different through rain. Everything looked cleaner than it really was. Nathan was 42 years old, though most people who met him thought he was younger. He kept himself in exceptional shape, his suits tailored to perfection by a man on Taylor Street who never asked questions and never kept records. Today he wore charcoal gray, a white shirt with no tie, his dark hair combed back from a face that women called handsome and men called dangerous. His eyes were pale blue, the kind that seemed to see through pretense and locate weakness with surgical precision. Those eyes had watched men beg, lie, and break. They had also watched his daughter take her first steps, watched his wife sleep, watched the sun rise over the lake on mornings when sleep wouldn't come. Behind him, the penthouse stretched out in muted tones of cream and gray. Modern furniture, expensive, but not ostentatious. Original artwork on the walls, pieces his wife Isabel had chosen before everything changed. A Steinway grand piano near the east wall that no one played anymore. The space felt too large now, too quiet, like a church after the congregation has left. His phone buzzed on the marble countertop. Nathan turned from the window and picked it up, reading the message from Marco, his oldest friend and most trusted lieutenant. The text was brief. Confirmed, Vincent Russo, heart attack, funeral Friday at Holy Name Cathedral, 3 p.m. Nathan set the phone down carefully. Vincent Russo was dead, the man who had controlled the South Side for 23 years, who had been Nathan's mentor, then his rival, then his enemy, gone at 67, felled by his own failing heart, rather than the dozen men who had wanted him dead. There was something anticlimactic about it, something unsatisfying, like rain that stops before the storm really breaks. The door to the bedroom opened and Isabel emerged, barefoot, wearing jeans and one of Nathan's old shirts. At 28, she still looked like the NYU art student he had met 8 years ago in a gallery in Soho, all long dark hair and intelligent eyes. But there were differences now, subtle lines of worry at the corners of those eyes, a guardedness in the way she moved through the penthouse as if it were a beautiful cage. "You're thinking too loud," she said, moving to the kitchen area and starting the espresso machine. "I can hear it from the other room." "Vincent Russo died," Nathan said. Isabel's hands paused over the coffee cups. "The one who—" "Yes." She finished making the espresso, brought him a cup. Her fingers brushed his as she handed it to him, a brief warmth in the cool apartment. "How do you feel?" Nathan considered the question. How did he feel? Relief? Vindication? Emptiness? "I don't know yet." "Will you go to the funeral?" "I have to." Isabel nodded, understanding without him having to explain. In their world, these gestures mattered. Respect, even for enemies, especially for enemies, was the currency that kept the machinery of power running smoothly. To stay away would be interpreted as fear or disrespect. To attend was to make a statement. "I outlasted you. I won. I'll come with you," Isabel said. "No." Nathan's voice was firm but gentle. "This one I do alone." She looked at him for a long moment, then kissed his cheek. "Be careful." The rain intensified outside, drumming harder against the windows. Nathan thought about Vincent Russo, about the first time they had met 20 years ago, in a restaurant in Little Italy. Vincent had been in his prime then, a barrel-chested man with a booming laugh and eyes that calculated profit in every conversation. He had taken Nathan under his wing, taught him how the business really worked, the unwritten rules that governed their world. For 5 years, Nathan had been Vincent's protégé, his rising star. Then Nathan had fallen in love with Vincent's niece, Sophia, and everything had changed. The memory came unbidden. Sophia, in a red dress at a Christmas party, her laughter cutting through the noise of the celebration. The way Vincent's expression had shifted from warmth to ice when he realized what was happening between them. The ultimatum delivered in a back room: walk away or face consequences. Nathan had been 24 years old, too young to understand that some choices echo forever. He had walked away. Sophia had never forgiven him. 3 months later, she married a lawyer from Boston and moved away. 6 months after that, Nathan had started his own operation on the north side, cutting into Vincent's territory, building his own empire. The betrayal, as Vincent saw it, was complete. Now Vincent was dead, and Nathan was Chicago's undisputed power. 37 legitimate businesses, a dozen more that existed in the gray areas of the law, politicians who took his calls, judges who understood the value of discretion, police commanders who knew when to look away. He had built something that would outlast him, an organization that ran with the precision of a Swiss watch. But standing in his penthouse with the rain falling and his wife making coffee in the kitchen, Nathan felt the weight of it all pressing down on his shoulders. Every decision he had made, every compromise, every act of violence necessary to maintain his position, they had brought him here, to this moment, watching rain distort the city below. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Marco. Package ready. 100,000. Used bills. Non-sequential. Nathan had ordered the cash the day before, when he first heard the rumors of Vincent's death. It was an old tradition, bringing money to the funeral of a respected boss. The amount mattered. Too little was insulting. Too much was suspicious. 100,000 was exactly right. Enough to show respect. Enough to demonstrate power. Not so much that it looked like guilt. Isabel returned to the bedroom. Nathan heard her moving around, getting dressed, returning to the routines that structured their days. He looked down at his espresso, saw his reflection wavering in the dark surface. The rain continued to fall. Outside, Chicago moved through its afternoon, indifferent to the death of Vincent Russo, indifferent to Nathan's complicated feelings about it. Somewhere in the city, arrangements were being made, flowers ordered, security coordinated. The cathedral would be packed. Everyone who mattered would be there. Old families, new operators, people who wanted to be seen, people who needed to see who else showed up. Funerals in their world were political theater, every gesture scrutinized, every absence noted. But as he stood there watching the rain, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Vincent dying of a heart attack felt too convenient, too clean. Vincent had been a fighter, a survivor. Men like that didn't go quietly in their sleep. The unease settled into Nathan's chest, a cold weight that the espresso couldn't warm. He told himself it was nothing, just old paranoia, the habits of a lifetime spent watching for threats. Vincent was dead. The doctors had confirmed it. Marco's sources were reliable. Still, the feeling persisted as the rain fell, and Friday approached. A whisper at the edge of Nathan's consciousness that something was about to break, and when it did, the city would never be the same. Friday arrived cold and clear, the rain finally broken by a sharp wind off Lake Michigan that cut through even the heaviest coats. Nathan dressed carefully that morning, choosing a black suit, black tie, white shirt. Isabel helped him with his cufflinks, her fingers steady, her expression concerned. "You look like you're going to war," she said softly. "Maybe I am. Vincent is dead, Nathan. What war is there left to fight?" He looked at her. This woman who had anchored his life for 8 years, who had given him something to protect beyond money and territory. The ones we don't see coming are always the most dangerous. Marco arrived at 2 p.m. in a black Mercedes S-Class. He was Nathan's age, shorter and stockier, with a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. They had grown up 3 blocks apart in Bridgeport, had known each other since they were 10 years old, stealing cigarettes from Marco's father's corner store. Everything Nathan had built, Marco had helped build. The trust between them was absolute. "Ready?" Marco asked as Nathan slid into the back seat. "Let's get this over with." The briefcase sat between them, innocuous black leather containing 10 bundles of $100 bills. Marco had handled it himself, made sure every bill was used, circulated, untraceable. It was the kind of detail that mattered in their business. As they drove toward Holy Name Cathedral on North State Street, Nathan watched Chicago slide past the tinted windows. The city looked scrubbed clean by the 3 days of rain. The streets still slick with water, but the sky startlingly blue. They passed through the loop, the great buildings rising like monuments to commerce and power. This was Nathan's city now. His territory expanded from the north side to encompass most of downtown, legitimate businesses providing cover and cash flow for the operations that would never appear on any tax return. Big crowd expected? Nathan asked. Huge. Every family from Boston to Detroit is sending representatives. The Italians, the Irish, even some Russians. Vincent knew everybody. Who's taking over his operation? Marco hesitated. That's unclear. He has 3 sons, but none of them have the stomach for the business. Smart money says they sell everything. Walk away. The South Side's going to be open territory. Nathan absorbed this information. Open territory meant opportunity, but it also meant chaos. Other families would move in, try to claim what Vincent had built. There would be negotiations, agreements, probably violence. The peace Nathan had maintained for the last 5 years could shatter overnight. We need to move fast, Nathan said. Soon as the funeral's over, I want meetings scheduled with everyone who matters. We consolidate the South Side before anyone else gets ideas. Already setting it up, Marco confirmed. They arrived at Holy Name Cathedral 15 minutes early. The Gothic Revival building dominated the block, its twin spires reaching toward the blue sky. News vans lined the street, cameras filming the arrival of the various cars, reporters speculating about who was inside. The police had set up barriers, keeping the public back, but Nathan could see the crowd gathering, people who wanted to witness this moment of transition. Nathan took the briefcase and stepped out of the Mercedes. Immediately, he felt the eyes on him. Other men stood on the cathedral steps, smoking, talking in low voices, their own briefcases and envelopes in hand. Nathan recognized most of them. Anthony Moretti from Boston, the old man who ran New England with an iron fist. Frank Delgado from Detroit, young and ambitious, always looking for an angle. Dmitry Volkov, the Russian, impeccably dressed, his bodyguards standing nearby like stone sculptures. They all nodded to Nathan, gestures of respect and recognition. Nathan was the apex predator now, the man they had to acknowledge. It should have felt satisfying, this moment of ascendancy. Instead, Nathan felt that same unease from earlier in the week, stronger now, a crawling sensation at the base of his skull. Marco stayed close as they climbed the cathedral steps. The interior was already packed, hundreds of people filling the pews, more standing in the aisles. Flowers covered every available surface, elaborate arrangements in reds and whites. The air smelled of lilies and incense, a cloying sweetness that made Nathan's chest feel tight. At the front of the cathedral, near the altar, sat Vincent's casket, expensive mahogany, closed, covered with a spray of white roses. Vincent's family occupied the first 3 rows, his wife, Maria, his 3 sons and their families, his brothers and sisters, nieces and nephews. Nathan scanned the faces, looking for Sophia, but didn't see her. Probably still in Boston. Probably wanted nothing to do with this world anymore. An usher directed them to seats on the right side, halfway back. As Nathan moved down the aisle, he felt the attention of the room tracking him. This was his entrance, his moment to show respect and power simultaneously. He kept his expression neutral, somber, but not grief-stricken. He hadn't come to mourn. He had come to pay a debt, close a circle. The service began at 3 p.m. exactly. A priest Nathan didn't recognize led the ceremony, speaking about Vincent's contributions to the community, his generosity, his devotion to family. The eulogy was carefully worded, acknowledging Vincent's business acumen without specifying what that business actually was. Several people spoke, including Vincent's eldest son Thomas, whose voice cracked with genuine emotion as he remembered his father teaching him to play bocce in their backyard. Nathan listened, but didn't hear. His attention kept returning to the closed casket, to the wrongness he couldn't articulate. Why closed? Vincent's face wasn't damaged. A heart attack left no visible trauma. Custom dictated open casket for viewing, for people to pay their final respects. He leaned toward Marco, whispered, "Why is the casket closed?" Marco frowned. "Don't know. Maybe the family's choice?" Vincent would have wanted open casket. He was vain about his appearance. Could be the embalming didn't go well. Heart attacks sometimes? No. Something's wrong. Marco gave him a sharp look but said nothing more. Around them, the service continued, moving through prayers and hymns. Finally, the priest invited attendees to come forward and present their respects and offerings. A line formed down the center aisle. Men approached the casket one by one, some placing envelopes on a designated table, others simply standing in silence before the closed coffin, making the sign of the cross. Nathan waited. watching each man's approach, noting who lingered, who hurried past, who looked genuinely affected. When his turn came, Nathan stood and walked forward with the briefcase. The cathedral fell silent, everyone watching this moment. The protege turned rival, now the king, paying homage to the fallen predecessor. It was theater, ritual, the performance that maintained the social order they all depended on. Nathan reached the casket and stopped. Up close, he could see the quality of the woodwork, the brass handles polished to a mirror shine. The spray of white roses was fresh, probably cut that morning. Everything looked correct, proper, exactly as it should be, except it wasn't. Nathan set the briefcase on the table with the other offerings, then placed his hand on the casket. The wood was cool under his palm. He closed his eyes, pretending to pray, but his mind was racing, that unease now a screaming alarm. He opened his eyes and looked at the casket's seam where the two halves met. There was something, a slight unevenness in how it closed, barely perceptible, but there, and the smell, beneath the lilies and incense. Something else, something wrong. Nathan's hand moved to the casket's edge before his conscious mind fully registered what he was doing. He heard Marco's sharp intake of breath behind him, heard the rustle of movement through the cathedral as people realized what he was about to do. He lifted the casket lid. For a moment, Nathan's brain couldn't process what he was seeing. The body in the casket was definitely male, definitely wearing an expensive suit, definitely arranged with hands folded across the chest. But the face wasn't Vincent Russo. It was Carlo Benedetti, Vincent's chief enforcer, the man responsible for countless acts of violence over the past 2 decades. Carlo, who should have been standing in this cathedral with everyone else, mourning his boss. The cathedral erupted. Shouts, movement, the sound of guns being drawn. Nathan stepped back from the casket, his mind working at lightning speed. If Carlo was dead, if Carlo was in Vincent's casket, then where? "It's a trap," Marco shouted, grabbing Nathan's arm. "Move!" But it was already too late. The cathedral's main doors slammed shut, the side doors locked with audible clicks, and from behind the altar, emerging from the sacristy where the priests prepared for Mass, stepped Vincent Russo. He was very much alive. Vincent Russo looked exactly as Nathan remembered him, perhaps a bit grayer, a bit thicker around the middle, but unmistakably alive. He wore a black suit, his hands empty, his expression calm. Behind him came 6 men, all armed, all familiar faces from Vincent's organization. They fanned out across the altar, weapons drawn but pointed at the floor, not yet threatening, not quite. "Hello, Nathan," Vincent said, his voice carrying through the stunned silence of the cathedral. "Thank you for coming. Thank you all for coming." Nathan forced himself to remain still, to project calm even as his mind raced through possibilities and options. Marco stood beside him, one hand inside his jacket where he carried his weapon. Around them, the cathedral held its collective breath. Hundreds of people, dozens of them armed, trapped in a Gothic revival building with a dead man who wasn't dead. "This is quite the production, Vincent," Nathan said, his voice steady. "I'm impressed." Vincent smiled, the same broad smile Nathan remembered from 20 years ago. "You always appreciated theater, Nathan. I learned that from you." "Carlo's really dead?" "Oh yes. Heart attack, just like the report said. Unfortunate timing, but also providential. It gave me the opportunity to stage my own funeral, to see who would come, to understand the current landscape." Vincent gestured around the cathedral. "Look at this gathering. Everyone who matters, all in one place, showing respect to a dead man. It's beautiful, really. An honest accounting of power." Nathan's eyes swept the cathedral, calculating. Most of the people here were civilians, family members, legitimate business people, community leaders. But scattered throughout were the real operators, the men who controlled various pieces of Chicago's criminal infrastructure. Anthony Moretti sat very still in his pew, his weathered face revealing nothing. Dmitry Volkov had positioned himself near a side aisle, his bodyguards alert. Frank Delgado looked young and frightened, probably realizing he was way out of his depth. "So what's the play here, Vincent?" Nathan asked. "You fake your death, lock us all in a church, and then what? Kill everyone? That's not your style." "No," Vincent agreed. "Mass murder would be inefficient. I'm here to renegotiate." "Renegotiate what?" "Everything." Vincent descended from the altar, walking down the center aisle with the confidence of a man who held every card. For 20 years, I controlled the South Side. I built an empire through intelligence, discipline, and respect for tradition. Then you, my own protege, decided to build your own kingdom. You cut into my territory, turned my allies against me, disrupted the peace we had maintained for decades. You gave me no choice, Nathan said quietly. You made me choose between love and loyalty. Vincent's expression hardened. Sophia was family. She was sacred. You knew the rules. The rules were outdated, cruel. The rules kept order. Vincent stopped 10 feet from Nathan, close enough that Nathan could see the broken blood vessels in the older man's eyes, the deep lines etched around his mouth. But that's ancient history now. What matters is the present. You've become powerful, Nathan. More powerful than I ever was. You've modernized, diversified, built something impressive. I can respect that. Is this where you propose an alliance? Nathan asked, not believing it for a second. Vincent laughed, the sound echoing through the vaulted ceiling. An alliance? No, Nathan. This is where I take back everything you stole from me, piece by piece, until you're left with nothing but regrets. The threat hung in the air, crystalline and sharp. Around them, men shifted in their seats, hands moving toward weapons, everyone calculating angles and outcomes. The cathedral had become a powder keg, one spark away from catastrophic violence. You think locking us in a church scares me? Nathan said. You think this changes anything? I have twice your manpower, 3 times your resources. Whatever you're planning, it won't work. Won't it? Vincent pulled out his phone, held it up so Nathan could see the screen. It showed a live video feed of Isabel, sitting in Nathan's penthouse, 2 armed men standing behind her. She looked terrified but unharmed, her hands visible, held carefully in her lap. Nathan's blood turned to ice. Every muscle in his body screamed at him to move, to fight, to tear Vincent apart with his bare hands. But he forced himself to remain still, to not give Vincent the satisfaction of seeing him break. If you hurt her, Nathan began, his voice low and deadly. I won't hurt her, Vincent interrupted. As long as you cooperate, as long as you understand that I've planned this for years, that every contingency is covered, that you have no moves left to make. Marco tensed beside Nathan, ready to draw his weapon and start shooting. Nathan put a hand on his friend's arm, a silent command to wait. This wasn't the time. Not yet. What do you want? Nathan asked. I want you to understand what you took from me. I want you to feel what I felt when you turned your back on everything I taught you. Vincent gestured to his men, who began moving through the cathedral, collecting the briefcases and envelopes that had been left as offerings. All this money, all these gifts, they were meant for a dead man. But I'm not dead, Nathan. I'm more alive than ever, and I'm taking back my city. Chicago isn't your city anymore, Nathan said. It hasn't been for a long time. We'll see. Vincent walked back toward the altar, his men following with the collected money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe millions, all gathered in one place. Here's how this is going to work. You're all going to sit here, in this beautiful cathedral, and think about the choices you've made. My men will ensure nobody leaves. Nobody makes any calls. Meanwhile, I'm going to visit each of your operations, your businesses, your holdings. By the time I'm finished, you'll understand exactly how vulnerable you really are. Anthony Moretti stood up, his old voice cutting through the tension. Vincent, this is madness. You can't hold us here indefinitely. Someone will notice. The police. The police won't interfere, Vincent said calmly. I've made certain assurances. As for holding you indefinitely, I don't need long. Just a few hours. Long enough to make my point. Nathan's mind worked frantically, looking for angles, for weaknesses in Vincent's plan. The old man had clearly spent years preparing this, years building toward this moment. The fake death, the funeral, the perfect gathering of all his enemies in one place. It was brilliant and insane in equal measure. But brilliant plans always had flaws. Nathan just needed to find Vincent's. You know this doesn't end well for you, Nathan said. Even if everything goes perfectly, even if you get what you want, there will be consequences. The families won't tolerate this kind of disruption. You're breaking every rule we live by. I wrote those rules, Vincent shot back. I can break them. For 3 hours they sat in the cathedral. Vincent's men positioned themselves at strategic points, weapons visible, faces impassive. No one spoke much. The initial panic had given way to a tense waiting. everyone trying to understand what Vincent's real endgame was. Nathan used the time to think, to plan, to watch Vincent's men for any sign of weakness. Marco sat beside him, occasionally leaning close to whisper observations. Through careful glances and subtle signals, Nathan confirmed that at least a dozen of his people were scattered through the cathedral, all armed, all waiting for his command. But the video feed of Isabel kept playing on Vincent's phone, which he had propped on the altar where everyone could see. 2 armed men, his wife held hostage. One wrong move, and everything Nathan cared about would be destroyed. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the cathedral's stained glass windows, Vincent's phone rang. He answered it, listened for a moment, then smiled. "Excellent," he said into the phone. Then, to the cathedral. "Phase 1 is complete. Nathan, you're going to want to see this." Vincent held up his phone again, switching to a different video feed. Nathan watched as the screen showed his restaurant on Rush Street, the legitimate business he'd built from nothing, burning. Flames poured from the windows, firefighters battling the blaze, police cars blocking the street. "That was for 2015, Vincent said casually. "When you took over my distribution route through Gary." He switched to another feed, showing Nathan's warehouse in Pilsen, also on fire. "That was for 2017, when you convinced 3 of my captains to switch sides." Nathan clenched his fists but said nothing. Beside him, Marco muttered a curse. Vincent showed 3 more fires, each one representing a piece of Nathan's empire going up in smoke. Each one was a message, a reckoning, a settling of old debts. The money from the fires meant nothing. Everything was insured. Everything could be rebuilt. But the symbolism was devastating. Vincent was proving that Nathan's power was an illusion, that everything he had built could be taken away in an afternoon. "Here's what happens next," Vincent announced to the cathedral. "I'm going to walk out of here. My men will stay to ensure order. In exactly 1 hour, the doors will unlock and you'll all be free to go. Nathan, your wife will be released unharmed. The fires will be contained. No one needs to die today. But understand this. Chicago has 2 bosses now. Nathan in the north, me in the south. We're going back to the old arrangement, the old borders, the old rules. Anyone who disagrees can take it up with me personally." Vincent walked toward the side sacristy door, his men covering his exit. At the threshold, he paused and looked back at Nathan. "You were like a son to me once," Vincent said softly. "I want you to remember that. Everything that's happened, everything that's about to happen, it's because you chose to walk away from family." Then he was gone. The doors unlocked exactly 1 hour later, just as Vincent had promised. The cathedral emptied quickly, men rushing to their cars, phones pressed to their ears, everyone trying to assess the damage and regroup. Nathan walked out into the cold Chicago night with Marco at his side, his mind already 3 moves ahead. "The restaurant and warehouse are manageable," Marco said, as they climbed into the Mercedes. "But he's made his point. Everyone saw those fires. Everyone knows he hit us and we couldn't stop him. Drive to the penthouse," Nathan ordered. "I need to see Isabel." They made the trip in tense silence, Nathan's phone buzzing constantly with calls he didn't answer. His organization was in chaos, everyone looking for direction, for reassurance that their leader was still in control. But Nathan couldn't think about that yet. First, Isabel. First, make sure she was safe. The penthouse was exactly as he had left it that morning, except for the signs of forced entry at the door and the lingering presence of strangers in his space. Isabel sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, a cup of tea growing cold on the coffee table. When she saw Nathan, she stood, and he crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. "I'm okay," she whispered against his chest. "They didn't hurt me. They just waited." "I'm sorry," Nathan said, and meant it. "I should have seen this coming. How could you? He was supposed to be dead." Nathan held her for a long moment, feeling the warmth of her body, the steady rhythm of her breathing. This was what mattered. This was what he had to protect. Everything else, the money, the power, the territory, meant nothing if he couldn't keep her safe. Marco cleared his throat from the doorway. "Boss, we need to talk. The others are waiting." Nathan reluctantly released Isabel and followed Marco to the home office, a room lined with books and expensive technology. On the computer screen, a secure video conference was already set up, 8 faces looking back at him. His captains, the men who ran his various operations throughout Chicago. "Give me the full damage report," Nathan said. For the next 30 minutes, his people outlined the extent of Vincent's attack. 7 properties hit, all simultaneously, all strategic targets chosen to cause maximum disruption with minimum actual damage. The fires had been controlled, no casualties, but the message was clear. Vincent could reach anything Nathan owned, anytime he wanted. He's still got people inside our organization, Marco said grimly. That's the only way he could have coordinated this. We've got a leak, maybe multiple leaks. Find them, Nathan ordered. I want to know everyone who's had contact with Vincent's people in the last 6 months. Check phone records, bank accounts, everything. That'll take time, one of the captains said. Meanwhile, Vincent's going to keep pressing. Word on the street is he's already reaching out to our Southside connections, offering better terms, playing on resentment about how we took over his territory. Nathan leaned back in his chair, thinking. Vincent had executed Phase 1 perfectly. The dramatic reveal, the destruction of property, the demonstration of reach and planning. But what was Phase 2? Vincent wasn't stupid. He knew Nathan wouldn't just roll over, wouldn't accept a return to the old boundaries without a fight. He's expecting us to retaliate, Nathan said slowly. He's expecting me to respond with force, to start a war. That's what he wants. Chaos that he can exploit. So what do we do? Marco asked. Nathan was quiet for a long moment, thinking about Vincent's last words in the cathedral. You were like a son to me once. The relationship between them had always been complicated, layered with genuine affection, bitter betrayal, and professional rivalry. Vincent had taught Nathan everything, then became the obstacle Nathan had to overcome to succeed. And now, in his supposed final act, Vincent was trying to force a reckoning. We don't give him the war he wants, Nathan said finally. We investigate, we secure our operations, we find the leaks, but we don't strike back. Not yet. The captains looked uncertain, glancing at each other. In their world, failing to respond to an attack was seen as weakness. But Nathan understood something they didn't. Vincent was testing him, trying to provoke the old Nathan, the younger man who had responded to every slight with immediate violence. Trust me, Nathan said. Vincent's plan has a flaw. We just need to find it. The meeting ended. Marco stayed behind, his expression troubled. You sure about this? Not retaliating makes us look weak. It makes us look patient, Nathan corrected. Vincent's advantage right now is that he's been planning this for years. We're reactive, scrambling. If we respond immediately, we're still playing his game by his rules. We need to change the game. How? Nathan stood and walked to the window, looking out over the Chicago skyline. Lights sparkled across the darkness, millions of lives being lived in the city below. His city. Vincent could burn a few buildings, scare a few people, but he couldn't change the fundamental reality. Nathan had spent 20 years building relationships, earning loyalty, modernizing the operation. Vincent's way of doing business was dying. The old man just couldn't accept it. Vincent said something in the cathedral, Nathan said slowly. He said Sophia was sacred. That family was everything. He's always been obsessed with family, with blood ties, with the old traditions. So that's his weakness. He can't see past it. Everything he does is filtered through that lens. Nathan turned to Marco, an idea taking shape. Get me everything you can find on Sophia. Where she is now, what she's doing, who she's talking to, and find out where Vincent is staying. He won't be at his old house, too obvious. He'll be somewhere that means something to him emotionally. Marco nodded, pulling out his phone to start making calls. Nathan returned to the living room where Isabel still sat on the couch, staring at nothing. I saw something today, she said quietly, while those men were here, watching me. One of them got a phone call. He went into the kitchen to take it, but I could hear him through the wall. He said, "Tell Vincent we'll be done by midnight. The girl won't be a problem after that." Nathan froze. What girl? I don't know, but it sounded wrong, like they were planning something else, something Vincent hadn't told you about. Nathan's mind raced. Vincent had orchestrated the cathedral gathering, the fires, the hostage situation, all elaborate theater designed to demonstrate power and settle old scores. But if there was another element, something else happening simultaneously, then Nathan had been looking at only part of the picture. Did you hear anything else? Nathan asked urgently. Just an address, North Avenue and Kedzie. He said, the property on North and Kedzie. Nathan pulled out his phone and brought up a map, zooming in on the intersection Isabel had mentioned. North Avenue and Kedzie was in Humboldt Park, a neighborhood that had been solidly Vincent's territory 20 years ago, but had changed hands multiple times since. There was a large building on that corner, an old warehouse that had been converted to lofts. Nathan remembered it because he had considered buying it a few years back, but decided against it due to structural issues. "Marco," Nathan called. "What do we own on North and Kedzie?" Marco came back into the room, checking his phone. "Nothing current. We used to have a storage facility nearby but sold it off in 2019. Why? Because Vincent has something happening there tonight. Something involving a girl." Nathan checked his watch. 9 p.m., 3 hours until midnight. "Get a team together. Surveillance only, no engagement. I want to know what's at that warehouse and why Vincent cares about it." 45 minutes later, Nathan sat in the back of a van 2 blocks from the warehouse, watching live feeds from cameras his team had positioned on nearby buildings. The warehouse looked abandoned, most of the windows dark, no obvious activity. But there were 2 black SUVs parked in the loading dock area, and thermal imaging showed multiple heat signatures inside the building. 8 people on the ground floor, the surveillance tech reported. 2 more on the second floor, northeast corner. "Can we get audio?" Nathan asked. "Working on it. The walls are thick, lots of interference." Nathan watched the screens, waiting, that familiar unease from earlier in the week, now a full-blown certainty that something terrible was about to happen. Vincent had gone to extraordinary lengths to arrange the cathedral gathering, to get everyone in one place, to make his demonstration of power. But why? What did he gain beyond temporary psychological advantage? Nathan's organization would recover from the fires in weeks. The leaked operations would be plugged. The south side could be contested, negotiated, divided, unless Vincent's real goal was never about territory. "Got audio," the tech said suddenly, piping sound through the van's speakers. Voices, muffled but distinct. "Told us midnight, so midnight it is. Vincent wants her alive until then." "Why? What's the point of keeping her if we're just going to—" "Don't question it. Vincent has his reasons." A woman's voice, younger, frightened. "Please, I don't understand why you're doing this. I haven't done anything. I've been away for years." Nathan's blood turned to ice. He knew that voice. "Is that—" Marco started. "Sophia," Nathan finished. "Vincent's niece. The woman Nathan had loved 20 years ago. The reason for everything that had gone wrong between Nathan and Vincent. She was supposed to be in Boston, married, living a safe civilian life far from Chicago's underworld. But she was here, in a warehouse, held by Vincent's men, and at midnight, something was going to happen to her." "This doesn't make sense," Marco said. "Why would Vincent kidnap his own niece?" Nathan's mind worked frantically, pieces clicking together. Vincent's obsession with family, his bitter anger about Nathan and Sophia's relationship, his elaborate plan to gather everyone at the funeral. And now Sophia, held prisoner, a clock counting down to midnight. "It's not about me," Nathan said slowly. "It never was. This whole thing, the fake death, the funeral, the fires, it was all misdirection. Vincent's real target is Sophia. But why? Because she left. Because she married someone outside the family, broke the rules Vincent held sacred, and now he's going to punish her for it." Nathan grabbed his phone, started calling his people. "Get everyone to that warehouse now. Full team, full arms. We're going in." "Nathan, we don't know what Vincent's—" "We're going in," Nathan repeated, his voice like iron. "No one gets hurt on my watch. Not because of my choices. Not anymore." By 11 p.m., Nathan had 30 men positioned around the warehouse, the largest force he could mobilize on short notice. They moved through Humboldt Park like shadows, taking positions on rooftops, in alleys, behind parked cars. Vincent's men inside the warehouse had no idea they were surrounded. Nathan wore a tactical vest and carried a Sig Sauer P226, Marco beside him with an AR-15. They crouched behind a rusted dumpster across from the loading dock, watching the 2 SUVs and the single entrance. Thermal shows the 8 men on the ground floor are moving, the surveillance tech reported through Nathan's earpiece. They're gathering in the center of the space. The 2 heat signatures on the second floor remain stationary. "One of those is Sophia," Nathan said. "The other is probably a guard. How do you want to play this?" Marco asked. Nathan checked his watch. 11:45. 15 minutes until whatever Vincent had planned reached its conclusion. Not enough time for subtlety or negotiation. They would have to hit fast, hit hard, secure Sophia before Vincent's men could react. Teams Alpha and Bravo take the loading dock entrance. Team Charlie comes through the second-floor windows on the east side, secures Sophia. Everyone else provides cover and secures the perimeter. On my signal. His team confirmed their readiness. Nathan took a breath, thinking about Sophia, about the young woman he had loved and left behind, about how that single decision had cascaded into 20 years of consequences. He had walked away to save her from Vincent's world, from the violence and compromise that came with loving someone like him, and now she was back in that world anyway, caught in a trap laid by her own uncle. All teams go. They moved simultaneously, 30 men converging on the warehouse from multiple angles. Team Alpha hit the loading dock door with a battering ram, the metal giving way with a screaming crash. Team Charlie repelled through second-floor windows, glass shattering. Nathan and Marco went through the main entrance, weapons up, moving fast. Inside, the warehouse was exactly as Nathan remembered. Open floor plan, exposed ductwork, concrete floors stained with decades of industrial work. The 8 men Vincent had positioned there tried to react, reaching for weapons, but they were overwhelmed in seconds. Nathan's team had surprise, numbers, and superior position. Within 90 seconds, all 8 men were face down on the floor, hands zip-tied behind their backs. Clear, Team Alpha reported. Second floor clear, Team Charlie confirmed. We have the package. She's alive and unharmed. Nathan exhaled, relief flooding through him. They had made it in time. Whatever Vincent had planned, they had disrupted it. Sophia was safe. He climbed the stairs to the second floor, Marco covering him. The space had been divided into a makeshift cell, a single room with a cot and a chair. Sophia sat on the cot, her wrists bound with plastic ties, her face pale but composed. She was 47 now, her dark hair threaded with gray, lines of experience around her eyes. But she still looked like the woman Nathan had loved, still had that same fierce intelligence in her expression. "Nathan," she said, her voice steady despite everything. "I should have known you'd show up." Nathan cut her restraints with a knife, helped her stand. "Are you hurt?" "No." Scared, confused, but not hurt. She rubbed her wrists where the zip ties had chafed. "Why is Vincent doing this? He called me 3 days ago, said my mother was sick, that I needed to come home. When I got to Chicago, his men grabbed me at the airport. I've been here ever since. He's settling old debts," Nathan said grimly, making a statement about family and betrayal. "By kidnapping me? That makes no sense. I'm his niece. You left the family, married an outsider. In Vincent's worldview, that's an unforgivable sin." Sophia looked at him for a long moment. "This is about us, about what happened 20 years ago." "Yes, Nathan, I need to tell you something. The reason She was interrupted by Marco shouting from downstairs. "Boss! We've got incoming!" Nathan ran to the window overlooking the street. 3 more vehicles had pulled up, disgorging a dozen armed men. But these weren't Vincent's people. Nathan recognized the lead man, Dmitry Volkov, the Russian from the funeral. "What's Dmitry doing here?" Marco called up the stairs. Nathan's mind raced. Dmitry at the warehouse, arriving just as they secured Sophia. That wasn't coincidence. That was coordination. But coordinated with whom? His phone rang. The caller ID showed Vincent Russo. Nathan answered. "What game are you playing, Vincent?" Vincent's voice came through clear and calm. "No game, Nathan. Just the final act. You thought I was targeting Sophia? You thought this was about punishing her for leaving the family? You still don't understand. Then explain it to me. Sophia is bait. She's always been bait. I knew you couldn't resist playing the hero. Couldn't let her be hurt because of your choices. So I set the trap, and you walked right into it." Vincent paused. "Dmitry was supposed to arrive at midnight, find you in that warehouse, and eliminate everyone inside. The perfect frame, Nathan Cross, killed in a shootout with the Russians while attempting to kidnap Vincent Russo's niece. The story writes itself." Nathan's blood ran cold. He looked out the window at Dmitry's men, taking positions around the warehouse. They were surrounded. Vincent had played them all perfectly, from the funeral to the fires to the warehouse. Every move Nathan had made was exactly what Vincent had predicted. "You know I'm not going down without a fight," Nathan said. "I'm counting on it," Vincent replied. "The violence, the chaos, the breakdown of order, that's what I want. Because in the aftermath, when the smoke clears and the bodies are counted, people will remember that it was you who started a war, you who broke the peace, and I'll be there to restore order, to bring back the old ways, the stable ways." "You're insane." "I'm practical. Chicago needs 1 leader, Nathan. Not 2, and it's going to be me." Vincent ended the call. Nathan turned to Marco. "How many men do we have?" 30 inside, maybe 10 more we can call in the next 20 minutes. Dimitri has at least 12 out there, probably more coming. Weapons? Enough for a fight. Not enough for a siege. Nathan looked at Sophia, who was listening to the conversation with growing horror. "I'm sorry," he said. "I tried to save you, and I walked us into a worse trap. Then we fight our way out," Sophia said simply. "You're a civilian. You don't—" "I stopped being a civilian the moment Vincent grabbed me. I know how to handle a gun, Nathan. My husband made sure I learned after we moved to Boston. Let me help." There was no time to argue. Nathan handed her a spare weapon, then gathered his team on the ground floor. 30 faces looked back at him. Hard men who had chosen this life, who understood the risks. "Vincent set us up," Nathan said bluntly. "The Russians outside are here to kill us all. We can surrender and trust Vincent to keep his word, or we can fight, and maybe some of us make it out. I'm not ordering anyone to stay. Anyone who wants to walk away, do it now. No judgment." No one moved. These were his people, loyal not because of fear, but because Nathan had spent 20 years earning that loyalty, treating them fairly, protecting their families, giving them something to believe in. "All right then," Nathan said. "We make a run for it. Teams Alpha and Bravo create an exit corridor through the east side. Everyone else provides covering fire. We get to the vehicles and scatter, regroup later. Sophia stays with me and Marco." They prepared quickly, redistributing ammunition, checking weapons, saying the silent prayers that soldiers say before battle. Nathan positioned himself near the loading dock, Sophia and Marco flanking him. "On 3, Nathan said. 1, 2. The first explosion tore through the warehouse's west wall, a shaped charge that sent concrete and metal flying. Nathan was thrown backward, his ears ringing, dust and smoke filling the air. He scrambled to his feet, helping Sophia up, his mind struggling to process what was happening. Through the hole in the wall came more men, at least 20, all heavily armed. But they weren't shooting at Nathan's people. They were shooting at the Russians. And leading them, a weapon in her hands and murder in her eyes, was Isabel. Later, Nathan would learn how Isabel had assembled the rescue force, how she had called every favor Nathan was owed, reached out to every alliance he had built, mobilized resources he didn't know he had access to, how she had tracked his phone to the warehouse, understood immediately that it was a trap, and organized a counter-assault in less than 2 hours. But in the moment, all Nathan knew was that the warehouse had become a war zone, 3 different forces engaged in chaotic combat. His people, the Russians, and Isabel's rescue team fought through smoke and noise and confusion. The tactical situation was impossible to read, friendly fire a constant risk, the whole scene threatening to devolve into pure slaughter. "Get Sophia out," Nathan shouted to Marco, pushing them toward the hole Isabel's team had blown in the wall. "Get her somewhere safe. What about you?" Marco shouted back. "I'm ending this." Nathan fought his way toward the loading dock where Dimitri's men had taken cover behind the SUVs. Bodies littered the ground, some moving, some not. The air smelled of cordite and blood. Every instinct Nathan had screamed at him to run, to escape while he could. But he knew with absolute certainty that if he ran now, Vincent would hunt him forever. This had to end tonight. He found Dimitri behind the lead SUV, reloading his weapon. The Russian looked up, saw Nathan, and for a moment they just stared at each other. "Vincent paid you for this?" Nathan asked. "Vincent offered me the south side," Dimitri replied. "Said if I eliminated you, I could have everything." "And you believed him?" Dimitri shrugged. "Does it matter now? We're both dead men." "Maybe, but Vincent gets to walk away clean. You comfortable with that?" The Russian considered this, his weapon still pointed at Nathan. Around them, the fighting continued, but in this small pocket of the warehouse, there was a moment of stillness. "What are you proposing?" Dimitri asked. "Help me end Vincent. Then we negotiate the south side like civilized people." "You must think I'm stupid." "I think you're practical. Vincent played both of us. He's probably watching this right now, waiting to see which of us survives so he can manipulate the aftermath. Don't give him the satisfaction." Dimitri was quiet for a long moment. Then he lowered his weapon. "Where is he?" "I don't know, but I have an idea." 15 minutes later, the fighting in the warehouse stopped. Nathan's people, Isabel's team, and Dimitri's Russians formed an uneasy truce, everyone too exhausted and bloodied to continue. The casualties were significant. 8 dead, more than 20 wounded. The warehouse looked like a disaster zone. Walls collapsed, fires burning, the floor slick with blood and shell casings. But they had all survived. And more importantly, they had all realized they were puppets in Vincent's game. Nathan stood in the center of the warehouse, surrounded by the assembled forces, and made a call on his phone. Not to Vincent, but to a number he had memorized years ago and never thought he'd use. The phone rang twice before a woman answered. "Maria," Nathan said. "It's Nathan Cross. I need to talk to you about Vincent." Vincent's wife was silent for a long moment. Then, "He's at the restaurant. Our restaurant in Little Italy, where we had our wedding reception. He said he wanted to be there when it was over. Wanted to celebrate where it all began. Thank you, Maria. Nathan, when you find him, tell him I knew. Tell him I've known for years what he's become, and I'm ashamed. Tell him his family stopped loving him a long time ago." Nathan ended the call and looked at the assembled forces. "Vincent's in Little Italy. Anyone who wants revenge, come with me. Everyone else, get to hospitals, get patched up. Go home." 30 men stepped forward. Marco and Sophia stood with them. Isabel appeared from the smoke, soot-streaked and fierce, and took Nathan's hand. "Together," she said. They drove through the Chicago night in a convoy of shot-up vehicles, an army of the betrayed converging on a small restaurant in Little Italy. Rain had started falling again, washing the street clean, making the city lights shimmer and blur. Nathan watched it streak across the windshield and thought about choices, about the moment 20 years ago when he had walked away from Sophia, about every decision since that had led to this night. The restaurant was closed when they arrived, but lights blazed inside. Through the windows, Nathan could see Vincent sitting alone at a table, a bottle of wine open in front of him, his expression peaceful. Nathan walked in alone. Behind him, his army waited. "Hello, Vincent," Nathan said. "Nathan." Vincent poured a second glass of wine, slid it across the table. "I assume this is where you kill me." "That depends. Why did you do all this?" "Really?" Vincent was quiet, staring into his wine. Finally, he spoke. "Do you know what it's like to build something your whole life, to create an empire with your bare hands, only to watch it become irrelevant? The world changed, Nathan. The old ways, the old rules, they don't work anymore. Young men like you, with your education and your innovation, you made people like me obsolete, and I couldn't accept it. Couldn't accept that my time was over. So you tried to burn it all down. I tried to prove I still mattered, that Vincent Russo could still make Chicago tremble." He laughed bitterly. "I failed, obviously. You outplayed me at every turn, saw through every misdirection. Maria was right. I became a monster, so obsessed with legacy that I forgot what legacy was supposed to mean. You used your own niece as bait. Sophia was never in real danger. I made sure of that. The men guarding her had orders to let you take her, to make sure she survived. Everything else? Yes, I orchestrated all of it. And now I'll pay the price." Nathan sat down across from Vincent, picked up the wineglass. Behind them, the door opened, and Sophia stepped inside. She walked to the table, looked down at her uncle with an expression Nathan couldn't read. "You called me home with a lie," she said quietly. "Told me my mother was dying. Made me leave my life, my children, just so you could use me as a pawn. I'm sorry," Vincent said. "For what little that's worth." Sophia reached into her jacket and pulled out a gun. For a moment, Nathan thought she was going to shoot Vincent. Instead, she set the weapon on the table between them. "I forgive you," she said. "Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to let your choices poison the rest of my life. You wanted to trap Nathan and me in your story of betrayal and revenge. I'm choosing a different story." She turned and walked out, back into the rain, leaving the gun on the table. Vincent stared at it for a long moment. Then he picked it up, checked that it was loaded, and looked at Nathan. "Will you tell people I went with dignity?" Vincent asked. "I'll tell them you were complicated," Nathan replied. "Like all of us." Vincent nodded slowly. Then he stood, walked to the restaurant's back office, and closed the door. 30 seconds later, Nathan heard the single gunshot. He sat alone at the table, finishing the wine Vincent had poured for him, listening to the rain hammer against the restaurant's windows. His phone buzzed with messages. Marco checking in, his captains reporting the resolution of various crises, Isabel asking if he was okay. But Nathan didn't answer any of them. He sat in the restaurant where Vincent had once celebrated his wedding, where the old man had built his empire one handshake at a time. and he thought about the weight of legacy, about what men leave behind when they're gone. Eventually, he stood and walked out into the rain. His people waited, solemn, understanding without asking what had happened inside. Nathan looked at them. Marco, his oldest friend. Sophia, the woman who represented his greatest regret. Isabel, his wife and his anchor. Dmitri, the Russian who had chosen alliance over enmity. All the others who had fought tonight, who had survived. It's over, Nathan said simply. Vincent is dead. The South Side is open for negotiation. We'll divide it fairly, peacefully, without more bloodshed. Anyone who wants war can find it elsewhere. Chicago is done bleeding. They dispersed slowly, cars pulling away into the night, carrying wounded men to doctors, carrying tired soldiers home. Eventually, it was just Nathan, Isabel, Sophia, and Marco, standing in the rain outside the restaurant. What will you do now? Nathan asked Sophia. Go back to Boston. Hug my kids. Try to explain to my husband why I disappeared for 3 days. He smiled sadly. Maybe come visit you sometime if you like that. Not to recapture what we had, but to make peace with what we lost. I'd like that, Nathan said. Sophia kissed his cheek, then walked to a waiting car and left. Isabel took Nathan's hand, squeezed it gently. Ready to go home? Yes. God, yes. They drove back to the penthouse through rain-washed streets, past the burned buildings, past the cathedral where Vincent's fake funeral had taken place just hours ago. Chicago looked different in the rain, softer somehow, more forgiving. Nathan knew that tomorrow there would be questions to answer, negotiations to complete, damage to repair. But tonight, he was just a man who had survived something terrible and was going home to the person he loved. In the penthouse, they stood at the windows looking out over the lake. The rain had intensified into a full storm, lightning illuminating the clouds, thunder rolling across the water. Isabel wrapped herself in Nathan's arms, both of them silent, processing everything that had happened. Vincent was wrong about one thing, Isabel said finally. What's that? He thought this was about power, about who controlled Chicago, but it wasn't. It was about the moment you chose Sophia over his approval, the moment you decided your life was worth more than someone else's rules. Everything since then, all the violence, all the betrayal, it was just Vincent punishing you for claiming your freedom. Nathan considered this, watching the rain fall. Maybe, but I made my share of mistakes. People died tonight because of choices I made 20 years ago. People made their own choices too. Vincent chose revenge. Dmitri chose greed. You chose to save Sophia even knowing it was a trap. That matters, Nathan. The choice to be better than the worst thing you've done. That's what separates men like you from men like Vincent. They stood together as the storm raged over Chicago, over the city that would never stop testing them, never stop demanding more. But they had survived. Against Vincent's elaborate revenge, against the assembled forces that had tried to destroy them, they had survived. And somewhere in the city, in hospitals and homes, in cars driving through the rain and bars where men toasted the dead, the story was already being told. The story of the funeral where the dead man came back to life, the story of the warehouse battle, the story of Vincent Russo's final gambit and Nathan Cross's survival. The story would be embellished, distorted, turned into legend, but at its core would be a simple truth. In Chicago's underworld, in the rain-soaked streets where power was won and lost, Nathan Cross had faced his past and emerged victorious, not because he was stronger or more ruthless, but because he had remembered what Vincent had forgotten, that power without humanity was just cruelty, and empires built on cruelty always crumbled in the end. The rain continued to fall, washing away the blood and smoke, cleaning the city for tomorrow. And Nathan stood in his penthouse with Isabel beside him, looking out over it all, grateful to be alive, grateful for the chance to do better, grateful for the rain that made everything look new. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a comment telling us what you thought and where in the world you're listening from. Subscribe to the channel for more dramatic tales that will keep you on the edge of your seat.